Today we're going to be talking about one of my favourite plants, the Schefflera, otherwise known as the umbrella plant. I've had this one for probably at least 2 years, but I think more like 3. I've had it for a while, let's just say, and yeah, it was my first umbrella plant and I've just really enjoyed owning this one. It kind of reminds me of the kind of 80s and early 90s. I'm pretty sure we had one of these in our home growing up. I could be wrong, I might have seen it somewhere else, but I definitely remember seeing one somewhere when I was a kid. So it kind of has a bit of a retro vibe to it that I quite like. But other than that, it's just been a really fun plant to grow. And I did find with this solid green umbrella plant that it took one growing season to properly kind of get started. So for the first kind of growing season, it did grow, but it didn't grow a huge amount. But then it was in the second year that I had it that it really started to take off and it really started to flourish. And then more recently, I also got this variegated umbrella plant, and I think I got this probably about 6 months ago. And yeah, I got this one because it has some variegation on it, and yeah, I really like it. Again, this one has kind of grown a little bit this first growing season, but I think it will probably take it after the other one I've got, and come next growing season, that's when it will really start to take off. When it comes to care, the umbrella plant is one of the most adaptable plants that you can get for your home. It's actually really happy in any lighting situation. You can put it in low light if you want to. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that. Most plants prefer bright in direct light, and this one's no different. It actually does prefer it if you can give it bright in direct light. But if you do put it somewhere else, then it's not going to die on you. It will be just fine. It just might not grow as much. So it is very adaptable when it comes to its conditions. And speaking of adaptability, I've also noticed that it's quite adaptable with fluctuations in temperature. I keep mine next to windows and they just don't seem to mind when the cold air comes in. I've never had any leaf drop from them and they seem fine. So yeah, in my experience, they don't seem all that sensitive to temperature changes. I wouldn't go too crazy, like trying to change the temperature all the time, but now and again, it seems to cope with it just fine. Mine haven't really done anything as a result. I have all of my umbrella plants potted in the same soil mix that I use. Well, I say soil mix, but it's a soilless mix. It's just equal parts cocoa coir, perlite and orchid bark, and that's what I have all of them in. That's pretty much what I put most of my plants in, and yeah, they seem really happy. I would say that in my personal experience, they seem to need repotting quite a lot. Mine have needed repotting twice this year. Most plants I might repot once a year, but these ones have needed repotting twice, and I'm already starting to see roots growing out of the pots again, so I'm not sure whether that's just me or whether it's how this plant is in general. I do sometimes bottom water, not every time, but maybe that's why the roots go further down. I'm pretty sure bottom watering does promote root growth, because I find that when I bottom water a plant, it tends to get more and more stronger root growth. I do fertilise also. I just use the standard houseplant fertiliser, nothing special, just what I can get locally, and I fertilise when it's growing basically. If it slows down like it has at the moment, although I will say that my green umbrella plant had slowed down, but now it seems to be putting out some new leaves, so that's quite exciting. I don't usually see new leaves from it during autumn, but anyway, I do fertilise basically just when they're growing, and if they're not growing, I don't fertilise. And also in winter, I do cut back on my watering. I never water without checking the soil. That's how I determine when to water them. So when their soil is completely dry, that's when I water them basically. And I just water them all the way through till it comes out of the drainage holes, or I will put them into a container of water for about half an hour for them to soak up water if I'm bottom watering. When it comes to humidity, these guys really don't seem to care either way. I'm sure they wouldn't mind a bit of humidity, but mine have always just been in kind of ambient UK conditions here, and they're absolutely fine. I would say I very rarely get any kind of browning of the leaves or even any leaf drop. They generally just stay pretty healthy. Up until recently, I hadn't really noticed any pests on them either. One of my umbrella plants, the variegated one, does have a few spider mites at the moment, but that's okay. I'm going to pop it in the shower after I make this video actually, because I saw them whilst I was bringing it over. So just like any plant really, I would just stay on top of making sure you keep the leaves clean. What I do is I just put it in the shower off the leaves, and don't forget the stems too, because spider mites do hide out in the stems. And yeah, you'll have to do it more than once, but if you keep up with it, you will get rid of the pests, don't worry. When it comes to propagation, this plant is actually really easy to propagate, and I do have an example here for you. This is a variegated one, and you can see that little baby leaf up there. That's the new growth. And if I take this out, you can see we've got some roots there. All you need to do is take a stem cutting and remove some of the lower leaves so you have some nodes. And yeah, just pop it in some water. You could also pop this into soil too if you wanted to propagate it that way. And this one has actually taken quite a while to root, but that's because I've had to propagate it as we're going into autumn. Normally I'd say it's probably best to propagate in the warmer months. It would probably be much faster, but I had to propagate this one because it had root rot, and I just love the variegation in this one, so I just had to save it. And I'm really happy that I've saved it. But if you were just propagating, you could do it during the spring, summer, or if you wanted to do it in autumn, winter. Of course, there are other ways you can kind of fake an environment, like using things like heat mats, grow lights, grow boxes, lots of things like that, or bags to keep the humidity in. You could try that too, but yeah, you'll definitely notice faster results when propagating in the warmer months. I think I just got lucky this time around that this one rooted, but yeah, really happy about that. So I think that just about covers the care for this plant. Obviously, that's how I care for my plants, but you may want to adjust things a little bit depending on your environment and how you like to care for plants. But what I would say about this one is it's definitely one of the easy plants that I could easily recommend if, say, you were a complete beginner to plants, if you've never kept plants before. I think you would get on just fine with this plant. It's very hardy, it's very adaptable and very forgiving too. I'd say just be careful you don't water it too often because you don't want to overwater. It's definitely best to underwater this plant because it is quite drought tolerant. So if you leave it dry for a week, for example, it's absolutely fine. But if you were to overwater it, then you could cause the roots to rot, and it's so hard to save a plant from root rot once it's started. So yeah, I definitely go on the side of caution there with your watering. And remember that during winter when it's colder, it's going to need less water. Always test the soil, that's what I always say before you water. Never water on a schedule. And going forward, one of the things I really want to do that I haven't actually done yet is propagate my umbrella plants and try and get them to branch. I would really love them to branch out. So this growing season coming up next year, I'm definitely going to do that and see if I can get them branching. And yeah, I'll definitely keep you updated on how that goes. So if you're interested, make sure you subscribe and yeah, give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Thanks for watching.